morning, everybody. How's everybody doing? Good? Yeah. Thank you for having me. Jen, you're happy with this room, right?
She's just commenting how nice it is.
It is, I know. Today is like just a beautiful, beautiful day. I've been in Mount Vernon for like 20 years, and just driving along that parkway today is just, you never get sick of it. So I'm sort of the smell the roses type of guy you got to enjoy every day. So, but anyway, how this meeting came about, just to let everybody know, we have probably 12 people in our networking group here, and Paul did a presentation on cyber insurance. And normally when you're in a networking group and you have people talk, it's like 10 minutes, nobody's really paying attention. But with his presentation, no, I mean, it's true, but with his presentation, our group was like 45 minutes, and the questions were going back and forth. So afterwards, I talked to Jen. It's like, hey, let's just do like a presentation. And we have a lot of people in the group. And so this is like really not a dry run. We're hoping to do a bigger presentation. But just to let you know our speakers right now, we have 4 speakers. First, we have Bob McCoy from John Marshall Bank. And then we got Shalani, am I saying it right? Yeah, also from John Marshall Bank, talking about fraud prevention. Then from Focus Data, we have Paige Moon, that's going to talk about cybersecurity. And then who's going to finish it up is Mr. Paul Dunstan with CBIZ. So I think it's going to be a great presentation. Don't be shy with the questions. And again, for me personally, it was just, I mean, a great learning experience. And the biggest security out there is cybersecurity. I hear it from the banks, the government, that's their biggest concern. So with that, let's just get started. So, do you want me to control the clicker or you guys want to? Okay, got it.
There's only one screen for me anyway.
Yep. Oh, okay.
Make it simple. Well, good morning, everybody, and thank you all for being here. My role at John Marshall is as the Chief Security Officer. So what I'm going to talk to you a little bit about today are some of the fraud trends that we are seeing at the bank and that we're also aware of going on in the local community. Just a little bit about me. I'm a native Arlingtonian, so I've been in this area my whole life. Been in banking for over 40 years, the last almost 9 years at John Marshall, and I've been in this capacity for about 5.5 years. So I came up through the branch network, and so I'm one of those security officers that has the banking background, not the law enforcement background, which is probably the majority of us in the banking world. But I wanted to start out by talking a little bit about, go ahead and you can click to the one screen I have.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or is it?
Who knows? I don't know what the wrong clicks on this thing.
Oh, okay.
It was working this morning.
While Joe's working on that, similar to the networking group that Joe was talking about, there is a group that I'm affiliated with called SAFI. It's the Security Association of Financial Institutions, and it's made up of security officers from banks, credit unions, and also law enforcement. And we get together on a monthly basis at the Annandale Government Center, and we share what we're seeing as happening in our respective worlds. And there's no agenda other than just to share that information. And sometimes we're able to learn about what's happening at one bank or one credit union that we can alert the others as to what to be on the lookout for. Some of the things I'm going to talk about, I'm going to refer back to SAFI. So I wanted to give you that reference as to what SAFI is, and it serves a very valuable purpose because the law enforcement is made up of police, officers, detectives of all of the local jurisdictions, Secret Service, FBI, U.S. Postal Inspectors, government security extensions. So it's a pretty broad brush of law enforcement as well as banks and credit unions that are represented. So it's a very good resource for us. Joe, you can go ahead and, here we go. This is my screen, so that's all you get to look at while I'm up here. So the, actually I think there's maybe, no, I think that's probably it, isn't it?
No, there is.
There's one more?
Yeah. You have the presentation.
Okay.
Keep
You want to
going.
keep going?
Keep going.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Keep on more. There we go.
All right.
That's it. Okay. So just real quickly touch on counterfeit currency. Whenever we get a counterfeit bill, we have to send it to the Secret Service, and they're the ones that collect it, and they kind of keep track of where these things are coming from. If we could get one a year, that's probably normal for us. So we really don't experience a lot of counterfeit currency, although I'm understanding from the Secret Service that that is fairly prevalent in this area. So just be on the lookout. This year we have actually collected 3 counterfeit bills, 2 of which said for motion picture use only. So whoever took that in wasn't paying very close attention to it. And the 3rd bill said play money. So you know, ours were very obvious. It wasn't, it didn't take rocket scientists to figure that out. But there are rings that do produce counterfeit currency, some of which are very good replicas of our real currency. So there's the equipment out there, and unfortunately fraudsters are very knowledgeable about how to replicate currency, fraudulent IDs, passports, things of that nature. But let me move on to mail theft. That's another issue that we're experiencing a lot in this area, but it's also a nationwide concern. In fact, one of the detectives in Alexandria, Peter Feltham, held a gathering of financial institutions, security officers, and law enforcement early in the year to kind of talk about this and compare notes as to what people are seeing. And you know, what the mail theft is, it used to be where they would, thieves would, you know, put in nets or some type of trap inside the mailboxes to capture the mail, and then they would retrieve that at a time when nobody was looking. That's not so much the case anymore. They're actually getting what they call the arrow keys. The mail service has these keys that access the blue mailboxes, and they actually have an arrow stamped on them, and so they're referred to as the arrow keys. And those are being obtained by the fraudsters either by stealing them, or sometimes paying a postal carrier for them that may pay them $5,000 to $7,000 for that key. Sometimes there's internal misuse and theft within the postal service itself, and the postal inspectors are working on that constantly. But one of the things that you know, when mail theft occurs, a lot of times it's going to be sometime in those hours between Sunday night and Monday morning. That's the greatest period between when the postal inspectors or postal service employees collect the mail. From late Saturday afternoon to the next pickup is going to be Monday morning. So the largest collection of mail comes in, and what these thieves are looking for are envelopes that have checks in them, so that they can either alter the checks or they can counterfeit them and take the information off of the check and create their own. A lot of times the individuals that are perpetrating this are mules. They're 18 to 25-year-old individuals that are hired by the rings that are conducting this mail fraud, and they're not putting themselves in harm's way. They're hiring people to do this for them. Postal Service is trying to counter that with a couple of things. They have, in some cases, they're using key catchers. In other cases, they're trying to work on a 2-factor key system, but they haven't got that in place yet. So there's a collaborative effort to try to stem the tide on this mail theft. We did have a case with one of our customers a couple of years ago where the individual had some counterfeit checks, or I should say altered checks, start to appear in their account, and you know, they recognized the same check stock, but the payee had been changed, the dollar amount sometimes had been changed, and they did not correlate to who they were intending to pay. So we encouraged our customer to file a police report. They did. And one of the benefits of doing that is the police were able to match up where they were placing the mail with other people who had similar situations occur, and they identified a particular mailbox that was being hit. And so where police reports don't always generate much in the way of recovery for folks, it does help the police if they can find those common denominators. And that was helpful in this one particular case. I received a call from a Montgomery County detective who they had busted a mail ring and found one of our customers' checks among the batch that they had gathered. So it is something that they are actively working, but it's a hard process to beat. Let's jump over to ID theft. This is something that we have incurred quite a bit of this year, where fraudsters are generating real IDs. You know, your DMV ID that has the star on it, and those are supposed to be, you know, more secure ID. Well, the fraudsters have figured out how to replicate those. And what they're doing, they're getting information. They're finding out, you know, who banks with you know, somebody with John Marshall, and they will take that into our customer's name, our customer's address, our customer's date of birth, and then they will superimpose the fraudster's picture and the fraudster's signature on that ID, and they will present that as a real ID. And it looks just like the ID that you have in your wallet or your purse. So then the fraudster will come in and they will bring a check that they will want to cash, or they will ask to withdraw funds from an account. And you know, one of the things that we try to stress at our bank is know your customer, know who you're dealing with. And so, you know, we had a situation where one of our branches had a customer come in, they recognized that they were a customer of the bank, they weren't familiar with this particular customer at this location. They got the ID from the individual and had a $3,800 check that they wanted to cash. And so they asked the individual to lower the mask, picture, face mask, matched up the picture on the ID, had him endorse the check, the endorsement matched, and so they cashed this $3,800 check. This individual thought, oh, this worked pretty well, so let me go ahead and do a savings withdrawal at the same time, or a checking withdrawal at the same time. And so they got another $3,400 on top of that and walked out with $7,200 from our customer's account. Well, we've since made our customer whole. Our customer is protected, consumer is protected by Reg E, so you know, those things are taken care of, and unfortunately in this case the bank had to take the loss. If anybody thinks that fraudsters don't talk to one another, let me tell you that they do. Because we had a copycat situation come in about 3 weeks later, different individual, different ID, different customer of the bank. They happened to go into that same branch. And this time, we changed our procedures a little bit. We tried to shore things up so that we wouldn't be victimized by this again. And so our bank has the ability to scan IDs and scan documents when an account is open. So we had an established customer of the bank that already had their ID and had their signature card scanned into our system that this branch could pull that information up. And so instead of just relying on the counterfeit ID that was being presented, our supervisor took that and matched it to the scan document and realized these pictures don't agree, signatures don't agree, we've got a copycat situation. So this supervisor was pretty shrewd in that she said in a voice loud enough, let's go get the cash, so that the person could hear her. So the teller and the supervisor went back to the cash room, and she got on the phone and she called me. And she briefly explained what the situation was, and she said, should I call 911 or should I call the non-emergency number? I said, call 911. And so she did. I immediately got on my computer, I can pull up the cameras from that office. So I started to watch what was happening in the branch. So they go back to the vault room. She talks to the dispatcher for the police and tells them what's going on, gives them a description of the individual, and all the while this individual that's trying to cash this check is in our branch. He's on his phone. Now that's a very typical thing of somebody who's perpetrating a fraud. They're going to be on their phone. They don't want to converse directly with the branch staff any more than necessary. So they're on their phone. They're kind of pacing back and forth across the lobby, leaning on the counter, checking over their shoulder to look out the window to see what's going on outside. There's a nervousness about them, but they think they're going to be getting this cash. So they get on the phone, hang up, get back on the phone, takes a stroll out in the front of the building. All the while, the dispatcher's telling our staff, go ask him how he would like that cash to buy us a little bit of time so that the police cruiser can get there. The employee went out, talked to him, gave him, asked him how he'd like the cash. So this guy thinks, oh, this is going to really happen for me. I'm going to get $3,800. And so they have a short conversation. She comes back in, and within about a minute of that, I could see the police cruiser pull up to the street. As soon as this individual saw that police cruiser, he headed out the front door and took a beeline to the left. And I could see the police officer take a step onto the curb and then change direction immediately and went after him. Because they had a description of this individual, they were able to apprehend that individual, and right now he has pled guilty to uttering and is coming up for sentencing the latter part of this month. Since that happened, knock on wood, things have calmed down for us right now. But they were very active for a while, and now that we have apprehended somebody, that has ceased that type of activity for a little bit. So it does work. We're fortunate in that we have the ability to scan those documents. When I shared this story with our SAFI group, some of the other bankers said, "Oh wow, I wish we could do that." So, not that that's something that you're going to ask about when you go to open up an account at a bank, but the technology, the capabilities that the bank has to help protect you can go a long way to minimizing those types of occurrences from people having fraud conducted against them. Let's talk about fraudulent invoices. This is occurring mostly against commercial customers where emails are hacked. It could be an employee of the company. It could be an employee of the vendor. It's happened both ways. An email is generally hacked, and you'll probably know that when an email is hacked, one digit or one character may be altered from the real email, so it makes it appear as though it's coming from the intended party that's known to the business, to the employee itself. But something is changed so that email is going to go back to the fraudster, not to the employee of the business. And what they're doing is generating invoices that are from known vendors that the company deals with. And if they're not paying attention, they're sending off payment, usually through online banking sources, to pay those invoices. They're not necessarily matching up the invoice for the job or the service or the product that the invoice is intended for. The other thing that they're doing, though, is whenever you all have businesses and you pay your vendors through online banking, you probably got your vendors set up in your accounts payable in the online banking system. And so one of the cases they made reference that we're going through an audit, and our auditor doesn't want to have the account anything happened to that account. They want to keep it static right now. So we've set up this other account for you to make this payment. So if you would pay this invoice to this other account, that would be helpful. Didn't think anything about it, just went ahead and paid that invoice. Well, we've had that happen on several occasions, and here's one of the problems with that. You know, in all three of these situations, the same individual initiated the payment, approved the payment, sent the payment. There's no dual control. There was no second set of eyes looking at that, questioning, why are we doing this? Is this legitimate? Nobody called that vendor to say, you know, I got these alternate set of instructions. Is this valid? They took it at face value and sent these payments out. In one case, company sent out $325,000. Now, because these customers authorized those payments and sent them out, we've got no recourse to help them out or to collect for them. We still tried, and we were able to collect some monies back for each one of the three. This one that sent out $325,000, we were able to get back $69,000 of it. They lost the other $255,000. Second company sent out $170,000. We were fortunate we were able to get back $148,000 of that for them. They still took a $22,000 loss. Third company sent out $78,000. We were able to get back almost $53,000 of it. So we will do what we can and work with our customers to try to help them out, but there's no guarantees on something like that. And again, the commercial customer doesn't have the same protections as a consumer, so it's important that as a business client, you all are checking your balances on a daily basis and looking at that activity. Don't wait for the statement to come. By then it could be too late. Check those balances on a daily basis and make sure that that activity looks legitimate. And if there's anything that you don't see that looks familiar, question it. Call the bank, let them know, so that we can get on that right away. Car wrap scam. This is a consumer scam, and I actually put a letter at each of your place settings so that you could see the set of instructions that went out to the recipients of this. We have a customer, a commercial customer, whose account was used for counterfeit checks, and this is a scam where the scammers sent out notices to consumers asking, would you like some quick cash, some easy money? All that's involved is you allow your car, your personal vehicle, to be wrapped with the advertisement of a local business. Now we've seen cars, cleaning, next day cleaning service, Chick-fil-A, all these different companies will have, a vehicle, a van, a car, wrapped with their logo, their advertisement. So that's what they're trying to do. And the intention here is to get somebody to buy into this and to obtain their car. So they get a willing volunteer and they send this letter of instruction out to them. And you'll see right in the middle of the letter, there's two lines that are bolded and all capitalized. They create a sense of urgency. Notify us as soon as you make this deposit, the funds go through, because time's of the essence for them to get somebody out there to get the car and to presumably take it and get it wrapped. These checks that they actually send a check to the consumer. They're instructed to take $500 of it, and the rest is going to be to pay for the car wrap. So these checks were drawn off of one of our commercial customers' accounts. Thankfully, they were a customer that did watch their account on a daily basis, and they recognized that these were not legitimate checks. So all of them got returned. these are probably checks that are in the neighborhood of $2,500 to $3,000, something like that. All in all, we had a total of $329,000 worth of checks come through that we know about. I think there were probably more that we didn't know about, but they sent an awful lot of these checks out and tried to get folks to buy in. And if the company wasn't watching their account, some of these checks would have been paid and wouldn't have been any skin off of the fraudsters' face. They were using somebody else's account. But they even tried towards the end. They even tried to work with a dealership to get a car, and the salesman at the dealership was very frustrated. He wanted to set up a sting with the police when he figured it out, but that didn't go very far. But the police weren't interested. But that's those types of things are, you've got to be careful. And letters like this, I'm sure you all know. A lot of these scams, there's usually broken English or improper English or spellings that are in there. This letter is actually fairly well written compared to a lot that I've seen. So you just got to be careful. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. That's the lesson to take from this. Social engineering. We received a communication from our core processor for the bank, just alerting us that a lot of fraudsters are impersonating bank customers, or bank customer service personnel, trying to entice them into giving up their information, their user ID, their password, to gain access to online banking, to conduct transfers, Zelle transactions, external transfers, what have you. We did have a situation back in January of 2021. This is over the New Year's weekend. New Year's fell on a Friday, so we were off Friday, off Saturday, off Sunday. At that time, our bank had limits that were set to where you could do a Zelle transaction for up to $1,000. Is the maximum. You could do up to a daily limit of up to $2,000. We had a consumer customer that was contacted by a fraudster, said, "We've noticed some suspicious activity on your account." Now, this is over that New Year's weekend. The bank's not open. The bank doesn't work on the weekend. We've got a suspicious activity, and we wanted to see if this was valid, if you recognize this transaction, and of course they didn't. So they said, well, we see some other activity that's pending. We can help you, protect you against this, but we need to have your user ID and your password in order to shut this off. They had spoofed the bank's customer service number. And so it appeared, the caller ID appeared as though it was coming from John Marshall Bank. Our customers were a little suspicious. They thought, well, if this is coming from the bank, this has got to be okay. So they gave the fraudster their user ID, their password, and over the course of that weekend, they took out $2,000 one day, $2,000 the next, $2,000 the next day, for a total of $6,000 that got sent out via Zelle transactions. Even though this customer gave the fraudster their user ID, their PIN number, they were protected by Reg E, and the bank had to take that loss. So there are consumer protections in place. So I guess the safeguards that I want to leave with you, just a couple things. Commercial customers don't have those same protections as consumers, so you do need to check your activity daily. If you have online banking, be using that. Check your accounts. Make sure that the activity looks legitimate, that you recognize it. If you use bill pay, set up some checks and balances. At least have 2 different people involved in that process, so that one initiates, a second person approves, and then this payment is sent. Don't have, unless you're a sole proprietor, don't have the same person doing all of those functions at the same time. And if you do suspect any suspicious activity, report it to the bank as soon as possible. The sooner that we can know about it, the sooner we can try to get some money back for you. You know, timing is really of the essence, because as soon as fraudulent money is transferred, it's usually sent out right away. If we can notify that bank, the bank of first deposit that's receiving those monies, hey, we've got a fraud situation here, we can get them to put that money on hold. And a lot of times, you know, as I indicated in some of those fraudulent invoice cases, we were able to get some money back for our customers. The time is of the essence, so please try to do what you can to notify the bank. Work with them. We're in partnership with you, so work with us, and we'll do our best to work with you. There are some other tools and resources that are available through the bank, through our treasury management services, and I'm going to have Shalani come up here and share with you a little bit about what those are, so that you can be well protected to conduct your activity without worrying about fraudsters taking over. Okay? Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. As Bob alluded, I'm Shalani Kapur. I handle the Treasury sales and service for John Marshall Bank, so basically digital banking. And I'll have you forward through these. So it's not all doom and gloom, right? Yeah, these situations happen, and as a bank, we try our best to put certain security measures in place to help protect your account. So a few fraud prevention techniques. Again, the aim is not to inconvenience you, but what it is layered security. So what you as a business need to be aware about, because it is very important for you to know that the commercial protection is not as elaborate as a consumer protection is. If for a business you lose that money, the liability is unfortunately on you, and the bank can help you get the money back. As compared to a consumer, where you are protected by Reg E and we will make you whole. So a few things that you can help with keeping your finances safe is, again, confidential information, right? Please don't share your password. Don't share your login information for your online banking. We have certain businesses where the owner is not involved with the bookkeeping. So their bookkeeper, they set up their online profile, but they give the bookkeeper access to get into the account. Again, set up your bookkeeper with the right access. It's called layered security, right? So when you are logging in, we are asking for multi-factor authentication. We want to make sure your computer is secure that you're logging in from. We want to make sure that if it is a new computer, we have dual control set up in terms of, hey, we will match it to your cell phone number on file and provide you with a PIN number to access your account. So these are layered security measures that we have in place. The intent is not to inconvenience you. The intent is to make sure the right person, the authorized person, is accessing the account and all your data. Account monitoring and alerts. Again, please monitor your accounts daily to see any kind of suspicious activity happening on there. You can set up debit blocks on your account. If you have a specific account that is only for account receivables, you can set up a debit block so that no money is going out of that account until you make the transfer to your other accounts payable account. So debit block is also a great measure in place. Check and ACH positive pay. Show of hands, have you heard about positive pay as a business owner? Great, I do see some hands up. A great, great tool for you to help protect your accounts. Like Bob said, check fraud is prevalent. And these fraudsters are great. They know how to copy the check, wash that check to make it as if it came from your account. With check positive pay, when you initiate a check, you send the bank a list of those checks that are valid checks. Automatically, these checks are matched, and only if a check does not match what you've sent us, it pulls up as an exception on your online banking. You can get text alerts, you can get email alerts saying, hey, these checks did not match what you presented to us. What do you want us to do? Sometimes it happens you hand wrote a check and you forgot to upload it. So you decide if you want that check paid or not. The beauty of check positive pay is if it is a fraud check, you tell us not to pay it and you move on with your day. There is no harm, no foul. As compared to you not having check positive pay, and now you have fraud on your account, and guess what? You have to file a police report. You have to close out that account and open a new one. You now have to make sure all your automatic debits and all have the new account information. So check positive pay gives you the peace of mind knowing that if there is a fraudulent check presented, that you are covered. Just deny that payment and move on with your day. So again, a huge, huge tool at your disposal. The second part of that is ACH positive pay. So electronic debits, right, from your account. Unlike check positive pay, all automatic debits hit as an exception on your online banking. Again, please set up alerts. You can have email alerts and you can have text alerts for positive pay. You then specify that, okay, this is a valid vendor. You can set up limits. Yes, they are allowed to debit my account, but they can only debit X amount of dollars, nothing more than that. So everything hits ACH positive pay. You set up the rules on how you want that vendor to be accommodated, and thereafter you won't see those hitting your account daily. So two great resources. If you have not talked to your bank representative about it, please do so and protect your account with positive pay. And of course, we'll have more information on cyber insurance in case something like that happens. If you'll click through, again, I have some brochures and materials available for you, again, talking about the same things. Please make sure you're not sharing your information. Your software is up to date. Make sure there is dual control, another huge feature, especially for ACHs. The person initiating should not be the person approving it. Similarly for wires, if you do online wires, make sure that there's dual control in place. So this talks more about some features available for you. And the next couple of slides talk about positive pay. Again, this kind of goes through the workflow for a check positive pay. And then one more slide, Joe. So yeah, so this is what I was talking about in terms of check and ACH positive pay, how it works and how it protects you. And that is about it. Yep. Thank you. Any questions for Bob and I that we can help answer? Yes.
Hi, actually I have a question. I had a situation where I had a business checking account, and there was a payment that was sent out to pay a vendor. I think it was maybe for $5,000, and the bank statement came in. The check came in, showed that it was cleared, and then the vendor reached out to me like several weeks later, and I was like, oh, I haven't got your payment. And I said, oh, well, that's really weird. I mailed it, and then when I looked further into it, it had actually cleared the account. And it turns out that the check that was paid had been deposited using a mobile device by someone that was other than the vendor. And so my question is, how can that be prevented from happening? Like when I look at the statement, I wouldn't know that, the account, information on the back of that check is not the account number of the vendor. But it wasn't like washed or anything. It was like the same vendor, and it happened to be at the same bank that the vendor banked at.
Oh, that's interesting. So that's a great thing. When you have a mobile deposit of a check and you're endorsing the back of it, they endorsed it with that exact payee name, but a different account number?
It was like checks stolen from their mail, like depository area. I don't know if it was a mailbox or like they had a drop spot or what. Someone just came and basically, so the check I sent was not the only one, but I never did hear like how that, the end result of that investigation went. I mean, I got the money credited back to the account because I was like, you know.
You disputed it.
Right, I disputed it.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, like, this positive, how can that be addressed, or is that just like basically one of those things that could possibly happen because we're all like digital these days?
Exactly. Unfortunately, in that specific case, positive pay, again, when it is a check, it's matching it against the check number, the date, the amount. There is a feature called payee positive pay, which is actually watching for who the payee is and actually matching that up too. In your case, it is more on the endorsement. So the bank that's actually paying is now liable because you did not make sure that it was endorsed properly with the correct business name. It is a huge part of offering mobile deposit is the check is endorsed properly. So in that case, you are protected because there is no way for you to verify, and on your part, you did the due diligence while sending it, but you are protected because the endorsement was not properly catched initially, and now you're running into a problem.
Okay, so then your bank would then go after.
Exactly,
like,
yes,
bank,
and that scenario, the bank is involved and we'll help you
Okay.
collect it.
Yeah, we would contact the bank and try to point out the situation as you describe it, and they would need to research where those funds went and reverse them. So
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
because that account number does not match that payee
Yeah.
name, so yeah.
Right, yeah, and you guys did, so you were great. They got all worked out. Sounds
Great.
good.
Good. Did you have a question?
Yes, so I use John Marshall as my bank, and on the mobile deposit instructions, it says for mobile deposit only John Marshall Bank. Am I supposed to be putting my account number on there too?
No. The
Only that,
endorsement,
right?
only, yeah, so
Okay.
it is that kind of, for mobile deposit only at John Marshall Bank prevents you for them trying to deposit that check again at another bank.
Okay.
Because, so that is where that endorsement comes into play. But no account number is needed, it's just your signature and those wordings saying that it is at John Marshall Bank only.
Making sure I'm doing that right.
Yes. Any other questions? Awesome, well, I hand it over now to Paige to talk about his fund.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm gonna take a different tact. So we've gone out and we've secured our deposits and our checks, and the money in the bank is in good hands. Later on, we're going to talk about insurance for cyber protection, and so your insurance will be in good stead. But what I'd like to do, if you'll move it to my slides, we're going to talk about cybersecurity for your small business. So how many small business owners or operators do I have in here right now? Okay, quite a few of you. All right, as you're going to see in a few minutes, and I don't want to scare you or anything, but half of you will probably be hacked this year. And of that half, 50% will probably be out of business. Let's try and make sure that doesn't happen. So what we're going to do, if you'll go to the next screen, we're going to talk about cybersecurity. And this is from the standpoint of your machines in your business and your network. And we're going to talk about perpetrators for targeting large businesses. Do they target large businesses or do they target small businesses? Why?
All the above.
Have the resources.
Exactly. So think about the food chain or the predator chain or the predator cycle. You've got small businesses that don't have the resources to build their networks, to protect their data. But those small businesses do business with larger businesses who do business with even larger businesses and probably even the government. So one of the ways that hackers get in is they attack you, get through your machines, and just work their way up the chain. So Small and medium businesses are the #1 target of all cyber criminals. And attackers only need to be successful once. What we've noticed is we're putting in place lots of hardware and lots of software and monitoring and all of these different things. And as you'll see, the statistics show that that's not enough. We need to put in a few other things, specifically security awareness training for your staff. Next slide, please. Okay, just the facts. Here's some statistics for you. 43% of cyber attacks target small businesses. You know, they really want your information. Another one that I thought was very interesting. 47% of employees claimed that they were distracted when they were at home, and that's why they got hacked. So not only do you have to protect your staff and your data in your offices, but now you need to do it inside your staff's home places. And the other is, if you do get hacked, look at the average amount that will cost your organization, $133,000. There's another statistic that I'll bring up, and I think you also bring up later on in your thing. Small businesses, on average, spend less than $500 a year on cybersecurity. That's not enough by any shape. So let's see. All right, I already talked about the other things. Let's go on to cyber resiliency. Next slide, please. So cyber resiliency. You can talk about cybersecurity, and that's really what we're going to talk about, but what it is that we're trying to build is a resilient cyber protection for your network. And what that means is you're going to be able to bounce back from a cyber attack. Because unfortunately, all of us are going to be targeted at some point. And some of us are going to be infiltrated. So we need to be able to bounce back. Not only do we need to build the walls to keep them out, but we also need to build the backups in and the training in and the routines in so that we can not only get back on our feet, but get back to work very quickly without suffering many major impacts. So I'll just use this, and there are a couple of these in my presentation. I'll be very quick with these. I like Bob's stories, and so I have a few of my own. This isn't the thumb drive, but have you ever seen a thumb drive sitting in a lobby somewhere on a table, or perhaps in a parking lot? And in one case, personal to me, I saw a set of keys with a thumb drive attached that said payroll. Now it was for my company. So, of course, I dutifully walked into our office and handed that to our finance gentleman and said, "Whose is this?" And he said, "I have no idea." And I thought to myself, wait a minute, this is a little suspicious. Thumb drives not only can carry a payload that is malicious, it can, in effect, render your computer inoperable. It could fry the power supply, it could damage the hard drive, it could do all kinds of nasty things. Or, even more nasty, is it could set up a keylogger so that your passwords and everything that you type for the next 24 hours are captured to a file and sent to an Asian company's or country somewhere. Not that an Asian country means anything, but so these are really, really bad things. And so any of your peripherals, you've got laptops with USB ports, and you've got mice with USB plugins, et cetera, et cetera. Make sure that those are managed by an organization that can manage those and prevent somebody from just popping a thumb drive in on your network. Specifically, those of you which are in the retail space, and you walk, or your customers walk in and they can see the back of your computers, they can very easily take a thumb drive and plug it into the back of your machines. Very easily. Okay, so we're going to talk about cyber resilience. Next slide, please. All right, so obviously it's vital for business continuity. It is to minimize your risk. It is the security posture you are establishing for yourselves and for your staff that you're going to do everything that you possibly can to not only protect your network, but also bounce back if there is an attack. Minimizes reputation damage and develops trust with your clients and customers. How many customers want to do business with an organization that's been hacked multiple times? So we need to keep that down. All right, next slide, please. All right, so these are the 4 layers of security and risk mitigation. There is hardware, so that your IT network, we'll talk about that very quickly, talk about some of the different elements that are on your network. Software and applications, what applications and software systems do you have that are running on top of your network and how those help to enhance your security. The human factor, hugely important. Your staff need to know how to work in this environment and what not to do. And then effective management of cyber risks. Okay? Next slide. Okay, so the network, briefly. I'm a network guy, I'm a propeller head, so I kind of like playing with firewalls and switches and routers and all that kind of stuff. I really enjoy that thing, but we're not going to spend a lot of time on this. You need a next generation firewall. You need a firewall that's smart. Firewalls protect you from the internet. Any of you out there that are using just Comcast cable modem and saying that that's your firewall, that's not a firewall. And it needs to be replaced, or at least enhanced. Monitor peripheral ports, we've already talked about that. There's software out there that can monitor, even shut down your peripheral ports on your machines. And then manage backup and disaster recovery. Now, why is managed backup and disaster recovery important? Is it because you've got to back up your data? Or is it because you want to be able to bounce back very quickly? All right, so we've had probably over the course of, 18 years, we've had probably, I don't know, 4 or 5 a year clients who have been hacked, not necessarily hacked, but they've invited a series or a type of hack into their networks called crypto locker. And so it usually happens on a Friday afternoon, and Monday morning they come in and then everybody in their network has got the red banner that says you've been locked out, you have 24 hours to send $20,000 in Bitcoin to someone overseas. And they panic, they call us. Well, we don't take on any clients who don't use our backup solution. And the reason for that is we can roll them back very, very quickly. So we help them bounce back with backup solutions. And that's why backup and disaster recovery is in the IT networking side. That is part of the resilience that you need. Software applications, security monitoring, all traffic entering and exiting your network. Firewalls are no longer the only thing you need to protect your network. You need somebody looking at that traffic. And they need to be looking at that traffic every moment. So security monitoring essentially looks at each and every packet that goes from inside the network out and in, or out of the network in. And it compares those with filtering lists to see if there's a malicious activity. If it finds a malicious activity, it shuts that traffic down. And then it calls us, or whoever's taking care of your monitoring. Zero trust security. Who in here knows what zero trust is? It's a term that actually started in the military. And in effect, it means that I could work side by side with you, but I can't trust you. So I need to confirm everything that we do. And that's what you need on your machine. Zero trust is, it effectively takes the ability to install software or modify configurations on that machine away from the staff member who's using the machine. And it does it in such a way that it does not impact their ability to do their jobs. It just prevents them from installing software. It prevents them from changing configurations, et cetera, et cetera. So it takes the trust away from them. Zero trust is very important today. Multi-factor authentication. I have a great story for you. Multi-factor, is it the end all? Is that what we need? Everybody needs multi-factor and then they're completely safe? We had a client, and it was Friday. The client's CEO, who has just sold the company, well, in the last year, sold the company and is entering into retirement. He's in the process of buying an airplane. So on Friday, he calls me and says, hey, I think somebody hacked into our email. Because I sent this wire transfer request from the airline or the airplane manufacturer to my bank, and the bank said, no, that's not a legitimate transfer request. And he goes, I don't understand, how could they possibly get in? I've got multi-factor on my machine. I use a multi-factor all the time. As a matter of fact, I had to change my password last night. And I'm thinking, okay, all right, let's look at this. Okay, so you get an email that said it's time for you to change your password. And he goes, yes. And so he went onto a website that looked very much like Office 365, and he put in his email address, he put in his password, and it popped up and asked him for his 6-digit multi-factor key. He put his 6-digit multi-factor key in. What do you think happened? A script grabbed all 3 of those pieces of information, logged into his account, installed forwarding. So any email that goes to him is automatically forwarded to a third party. Shut down his access, scrambled his telephone number so that multi-factor no longer worked. He was effectively locked out of his email. Additionally, they went in, looked at his email transactions, saw this wonderful transfer of funds for an airplane, and decided to sit themselves right in the middle in a man-in-the-middle attack. So they corresponded with his wife, who then started the transfer from their bank to, and it wasn't Cirrus Airlines, it was CirrusAirlines.com. Fortunately, the bank stopped it. Multi-factor is incredibly important, but it's not the only thing. You need to be smart. If you get a request to change your password prompt, make certain that you're going to the right website. Look at it, make certain that it says Microsoft.com or Office.com, not Zerofist.com, whatever the case may be. Or if you're uncertain, call your IT department, call your IT service company. The other thing I'll say about this is, well, we'll get to a few more stories after a bit. Managed spam, virus, and malware. There was a time when all you needed was antivirus. And you really only needed it on PCs. Because Macs, for whatever reason, were immune, or at least that's what Steve Jobs told you. Well, Macintosh or Apple machines now are 23%, going on 24% of the machines are sold annually. They are no longer just a quiet little brand out there that no one in the hacking world is going to look at. As a matter of fact, last year, Mac hacks were up over 1,000%. So they are no longer invulnerable to viruses, malware, that type of thing. So managed spam, virus, malware filtering, all 3 of those, you need those on your machines. And they need to be managed. So someone needs to be looking at that every day to make certain that your machines are safe. And then hardware and software patching. It's the boring stuff. It's the stuff we do every day. It's the stuff that gets my propeller hat going. It's the patching of machines, making sure that your machines are up to date and you have the security patches in place. Next slide, please. Oop, one back. Okay. Last slide before I just put it up there and say thank you. Human factor, security awareness training. Security, cybersecurity resiliency, in my mind, is a three-legged stool. The first leg is hardware. You have to have the right hardware. It has to be smart enough to handle a cyber attack. You have to have the right software. So you've got antivirus in place, you've got the monitoring in place, you've got all of those pieces. What's the third piece? Human. Yes. 97% of all hacks are caused by a human mistake. So we need to train our staff. We need to be testing them with simulated phishing attacks. We need to be testing their understanding of cybersecurity and network social engineering. I got plenty of stories on social engineering. We need to be going over that with them and raising their skill level, because they are not only the last line of defense, in most cases they're the first. And then risk management. All of this goes into cyber resiliency and risk management. Cyber insurance, critically important. As a matter of fact, you won't get cyber insurance without many of these things now. MFA is required. I don't know if zero trust is, although some organizations or some insurance carriers are requiring zero trust now. MFA is definitely required. Security awareness training is definitely required. And then an annual vulnerability assessment. Everyone here, small business, large business, needs to have someone independent do a vulnerability assessment of their networks every year. Okay. Questions? Have I scared you? Okay, thank you.
There we go. All right. Cyber insurance. We'll save the most exciting thing for last, because I know you guys are dying to hear about the insurance part. But it does make sense that I do come in and follow the bank and follow the folks that are doing the IT security for you, because as you've heard already, it's a multi-layered approach. Okay, and we're going to tell that with any client, any prospect. The insurance is on the back end. It's when the uh-oh happens, right? They're the folks on the front lines that have the services, they're doing the training, telling you how to mitigate or eliminate certain exposures. But as Paige mentioned, there's the human factor. Stuff happens, we're all trying to do the best we can, we're all busy, we all got a million things going on, mistakes happen. That's when you hope the insurance is there to back you up. And so what I'll talk about today, some statistics, some of them you've already heard. We'll kind of rehash those. Talk about the cyber insurance marketplace. Spoiler alert, is a mess right now. Things that you need to have in place to get cyber insurance, certain coverages you should look for, and then just some tips to help your business. So, by the numbers, cybercrime is going to reach $10.5 trillion by 2025. That will signify the greatest transfer of wealth in history. From money going from companies, which we've heard there's not a whole lot of protection there for you if it's not on the personal line, if it's on the commercial line, going to cyber criminals. It was $3 trillion in 2015. So we're talking about 15% year-over-year growth. It's not going to slow down. Think about how we all do business now, even from 2 years ago. People work from home. The lines of work and home are kind of blurred. We're all interconnected. Cyber criminals penetrate 93% of company networks, right? Again, human error. You can have the software and the hardware. You still have to have training. If they spend enough time, usually through a simplified password or an employee making a mistake, they can get access to a network. Work with folks like Focus Data to help protect in the first place, so that the don't get in there and move on is the best thing you can do. But cyber criminals can get in, and 80% of organizations have been a breach, more than one breach, right? It's not a matter of if, but when something happens, you just hope you're taking the steps so it's not a major issue. PwC survey just came out. This was kind of large level organizations. Their executives said the #1 business risk is cybersecurity. Okay, greater than fears of inflation and leading to recession, supply chain issues, labor shortages. #1 was cybersecurity. So, a company like Microsoft, they have a pretty big exposure. They're going to spend $1 billion on cybersecurity. As Paige alluded to, a small business on hand, less than 500. It's a pretty big gap. We're not saying you're going to spend $1 billion. The reality for a small business owner is you wear a lot of hats. You have a lot on your plate. Labor shortages, inflation, keeping your doors open are the #1 issues. Cybersecurity might not be the thing you're thinking of. Not going to say spend $1 billion, but you probably want to spend more than 500. Absolutely, you don't have the capital sometimes from financials or maybe internal IT team. Working with folks like Paige and their team to take that off your plate is essential. 43% of tax, we've heard that already, on small business owners. The large ones make the headlines, the small ones are low-hanging fruit, they can get in and get out. They are targeted quite a bit. So common incidents, we talked about social engineering fraud, invoice fraud. That's the #1 issue I see personally with my clients, and that is someone impersonating a vendor. And that is an insurance end, they're going to usually have a coverage called social engineering fraud. That's how they're going to label it on the insurance end, which may be a little different than on the banking end. But that is a single biggest issue, right? You send that payment and it's gone, right? You voluntarily parted, you were tricked into it because there's one letter off on that email that you didn't realize and the money's gone. Sometimes the bank can get some of it. It's very hard for them to get all that. And so having this covered, having insurance for that is vital. And also having the controls, right? I think that's already been talked about. Don't let one person just be sending money out. You'll see on cyber insurance applications, anything over $25,000, they want 2 people looking at them. It's, limit the amount of people that can pay these invoices.
Paul, do you mind if I ask a question
Yes.
real fast? On the social engineering, why is it called that? I mean, I know this is like your email. Yeah, well, the definition of it.
He probably knows it better than I do.
Yes. So social engineering has been around forever. Social engineering is essentially getting you to do something that you wouldn't ordinarily do. And that can be in buying a used car. It could be in people, waitresses and waiters influencing your purchasing of a higher priced item. Social engineering has been around a long time. What it became in security goes back to the old phone hacking days, where they would get on a phone, call a phone call center, and get them to give them a long distance number and reverse the charges. So that's the idea of social engineering has been around for a long time. But essentially it is someone is trying to get you to do something that you wouldn't ordinarily do. And a case in point is somebody comes in with balloons and a clown hat to your office and smiles broadly and talks to the receptionist and says, oh, I'm just going to go deliver these balloons to the birthday staff member. She's right down the corner, and walks right in, walks right past the front desk and goes into and starts dealing things. So that's where the idea of social engineering came from.
So look out for clowns.
Yeah.
Show your business. I'm not a fan of clowns to begin with. But, and it is, I mean, and that's how the insurance company, it's something that came about. We didn't ever hear about it until maybe 5-6 years ago. And now it's probably the biggest issue that I see. There are 5-6 figure claims. Obviously someone's going to be embarrassed they pay that. Someone might be losing a job if they're making those payments, right? So it's a tough deal. I have it /phishing. It's a form of a phishing scheme, right? With the social engineering, you're voluntarily parting through trick and scheme. Obviously, ransomware, a form of malware, that's making all the headlines. You'll see public entities, you'll see school districts were hit with ransomware requests where they shut down their ability when the midst of the pandemic and there was a lot of virtual learning until you pay this ransomware. That has crushed the cyber insurance market, some of these ransomware payments. That's why you're seeing these new requirements that we'll get into. That's probably the second biggest thing that I see personally. And then you just have theft. It could be someone, people leaving behind a thumb drive, a cell phone. There's paper W-2s there says it gets shredded that aren't. Somebody has a laptop on business that gets taken and they get access to it. So that's a major cause to these cyber incidents that we see as well. So cyber insurance to the rescue. Maybe, right? It's insurance. It lives in a gray area. It's just meant to be confusing and is never a black and white. Cyber insurance can differ from one policy to the other more than any other. We always recommend you get a standalone cyber policy. For a small business, you might just endorse on your existing policy some cyber coverage. It's going to be a little more limited in scope as far as what it covers and the amount. But these policies, they'll use different language, different descriptions. You really need to be reading the policy language or have a broker that understands that to tell you what you do or don't have. Huge increases on price in the last 12 months, 50 to 100+%. At a charter school we worked with in DC, they went up over 400%. Another school went up 150%. Depending on your industry, if you're healthcare, financial, law firm, schools, right? Think of what you do as a business. If you have a lot of information, you're more susceptible, you're going to see a big increase and more underwriting scrutiny. So that's what you'll see there. Insurance on the cyber end, 15 years ago it started coming out and they just added it on and no one really knew what it was going to be happening. Then we became more online driven, everything was more interconnected. You started to see these incidents, you started to see separate cyber insurance policies. Problem was you needed these really long applications that no one could fill. You're going to send them to Paige and their team and say, please help me with this. Insurance companies kind of streamlined the process recently, right? In the last few years, you could put in your industry, your revenues, answer a few questions, and you'd have a cyber insurance quote in minutes that had all the bells and whistles, was fairly inexpensive. We're back to the long applications because of the incidents that we've had in that update. Insurance is always playing catch up, right? There's cyber criminals are ahead of the insurance companies, new things come out, and then they're going to make changes to their policies. So right now, if you want a standalone policy, it's going to be a pretty thorough application. If you want a renewal, you need to start working on a application. What you might have answered a couple years ago, is it going to be sufficient anymore? And then there's new requirements. Some of the main requirements, heard it, multi-factor authentication, right? If you are remotely accessing your email or your network, you need 2 forms of authentication. That is an almost must to get a cyber insurance quote or to get a renewal. We can find some carriers that will offer it to you. It's going to be expensive. Ransomware is probably not going to be offered. And your other controls better be very good. But that is the #1 thing we need to see, and we still have organizations that don't have it in place, and you can't really get much cyber coverage, if any, if it's not there. Off-site backup, so how are you backing up your data? Okay, maybe you have a server on site or even it's in a cloud. Make sure you have somewhere where that's backing up and it's not all in one place. So if that got compromised, you don't have somewhere else where that data is being backed up at least monthly. Probably should be done, and Paige and their team could probably tell you probably more than monthly, but they're saying at least once a month data is being backed up on a secondary in the cloud server, what have you. And then disaster recovery. We already talked about, it's not really a matter of if, but when, so can you recreate your critical data? And again, this was kind of touched on by Paige. If you look at these 3, the first one is, okay, this is in place, it's not the end all be all, but it should lower the likelihood of maybe a ransomware or they get an email compromise, a cyber incident. The other 2 are, okay, you've had an issue, how severe is it going to be? So now the insurance company, if you have these, and they're going to ask a lot more than that, but they're going to see these 3 things, they're going to be more likely to give you an insurance quote. So what coverages should you look for? Again, these policies differ. They're going to have different names, different abbreviations. On the left, your first party coverage, and these aren't an end-all be-all, these are just some major things. These are the expenses you incur as an organization when you suffer a breach. Those first 2, and they probably should be flip-flop, legal expenses, IT forensics, those are huge in this. If you have an incident, you have a breach, and you say, hey, Paul, I think we've had a breach, we know this, we'll put you in contact with an insurance company. They'll have a breach coach get on the phone with you, and it's a fancy word for an attorney. Law firm that specializes in this, right, that knows what they're doing, that's gonna get all your ducks in a row, okay? And they're gonna, first thing they're gonna do is bring in IT forensics. You know, I think of people in like white suits, but it's probably a college kid in a hoodie or somewhere, I don't know. But they're gonna say, all right, what happened? How severe was it? What's the deal? These claims don't get resolved in like days or weeks. They go on for months, sometimes well over a year until everything's figured out. I had a school that had an incident as a phishing scam. They asked for login credentials. A few employees fell for it. We reported it. Luckily, it kind of stayed contained. It still cost us $86,000 and took about 11 months to get all the way figured out. Ransomware, again, we want to, if you have to make a ransomware payment, if that happens, all right, this policy will pay that ransomware fee if it's being asked, and then negotiations that go involved in that, if that's on the policy. Social engineering fraud, we've talked about it. That big thing that you want on there, typically has a supplement. What I mean by that is these policies, if it's a standalone cyber policy, usually start at $1 million, and you can buy them in increments of $1 million. Social engineering fraud will maybe be covered for up to $100,000 or $250,000. So just check that, right? That's where you're sending the paying the fraudulent invoice. I saw a policy, and this is the confusion with cyber insurance, right? It was with a carrier we knew had a good cyber product, but it was a more out-of-date policy form. And with their social engineering fraud, we looked into it. It had a requirement: you must call to verify before you're sending funds, right? Well, usually these claims happen because you're not calling to verify. It's a good practice. It doesn't always happen. But in that case, you know, what they were paying for, they really weren't getting a whole lot of, because most likely if they're calling, they're probably going to figure it out. Invoice manipulation. That's kind of the inverse of social engineering fraud. So that instead of you paying an invoice, they send out invoices to all your customers, and they start paying them. Okay? It's going to have a supplement most likely with social engineering fraud. Crisis management PR, again, you know, if you have a breach and it makes the local news, and you know, I think Paige asked how many folks want to do business with someone that they know have multiple breaches. Not a lot. So crisis management, PR, notification costs, those are things that should be in that first party. And then business interruption. If your systems are shut down, if you're a law firm and they shut down your files, your customer files, and you can't get access to those for a few weeks, how much of an impact is that going to have on your revenues? Check the waiting period. They'll have in a policy, they'll say, hey, this doesn't kick in until after 6 hours. So if you're shut down your systems, you're on King Street in your retail, and it's 3 hours before you can access your system and swipe credit cards, it's probably not going to pay out. It's important to know what the waiting period is on that. On the right side, okay, these are the third party. This is, we had a breach, we have expenses, now we're getting sued. This is what you don't want to have happen. If you got lawsuits, you know, it's going to cover the defense costs, the payouts. Those quickly get to 6, 7 figures. Privacy regulations, PCI fines. Sir Jessica and their team over here can tell you all about that. If you are swiping credit cards, you're accepting credit card payments, and you have a third-party vendor, and these folks at Trust can do a great job for you there. Make sure they're PCI compliant. They are, right, as your vendor that you're utilizing. Are they PCI compliant? Because if your customer's data gets exposed and they aren't, you're going to have some fines. And it's a lot, and I'm sure Jessica can go into as far as everything that needs to be done to be PCI compliant. So make sure before you're signing up with someone and who that vendor is, that they have the training, that they are compliant. You'll see at the bottom there, crime coverage. Not to confuse you all, but sometimes it's blurred. Is it cyber? Is it crime? What's it going to be covered? Social engineering fraud, sometimes a cyber policy might not offer. Sometimes you can get it on a crime policy. So understand, if, hey, they're not going to offer it to us, maybe we get a crime policy, can we add it there? There's a couple coverages: funds transfer fraud, computer fraud. That's where someone gets access to your bank's accounts and wipes out the money. We're starting to see some of those added on cyber. Usually they're on a crime policy. Don't think if you have them covered both that you have, oh, I have 250 of social engineering fraud on my cyber, and my crime I got 500,000. Probably not. What they're probably going to do is say we're going to share in that limit then. And then you're going to have two insurance companies, two counsels trying to figure out who's covering what. So don't have it on both policies, but make sure it's covered somewhere. Keys to preventing cyber claims, right? Employees, we've heard that. That it's the human error, we're working from home, everyone's busy. Upfront training's great, continual training is key. That is the easiest way for people to gain access. Email, it's not secure. I mean, some of the stuff I've emailed, I've thought, well, that was probably not a good idea. But we're busy. It's the reality. We send stuff through email we probably shouldn't. It's the easiest way for them to get access to your systems. Disaster recovery, okay, we've had a breach. What do we do next? Additional tips. Reduce data transfers, right? We're blurring the lines now of what we're using our company-issued laptop and cell phone, our personal laptops and cell phones. You know, it's not a great idea to be transferring a lot of important information on your personal cell phone, right? Your security measures aren't probably going to be as much as if it's maybe a company issue. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, not a great password. I can't stand, I always got to remember what passwords honestly, I have it in a note on my iPhone of the different passwords that I have. Probably not the greatest idea, but
I'll add a little bit to that. How long do you think it takes for a hacker to crack an 8-character password?
30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Wow.
So if it's 7, it's instantaneous.
And we use a lot of same passwords. You know, you get annoyed sometimes when you're told to update it, but it's for a reason. And then just be careful what you download, particularly from external contacts, right? If I got an email, we use Outlook. If it's not from someone at CBIZ, it's going to have a little EXT there. I'm always going to be wary if I'm being asked to download anything, to click a link for anything. That goes into that kind of continual employee training, right? Insurance, again, it's there on the back end, right? The folks that you've heard from already, they're helping you on the front end prevent these things. It is a piece of the pie that you need to have when the uh-oh happens, because it will happen. And then make sure you have not just a cyber policy, but the right cyber policy. And I will quickly end, but I got an email yesterday, and it literally at 4:10, you're always like, is my phone listening to me? So I was like going over my presentation, and this was the email. Let me just find it real quick here. At 4:10, from Insurance Business America, the cyber insurance update. And these were the articles they had. Municipalities, school districts, large targets, right? We talked about education. Public entities are huge. City governments, they're targeting them all the time for things. Closing the disconnect between cyber risk awareness and action. Most businesses aren't using best practice controls. We touched on some of that. Paige touched on some of that, making sure what you have in place. Their insurance product to protect law firms. Again, they are an industry. Law firms that need extra protection. Staggering 90% of cyber risk remains uninsured. Small, medium enterprises are especially vulnerable. I just thought it was kind of fitting when I saw that, we're talking about this stuff. It's a big deal. You can't go a day or a week without seeing a headline of some organization, and it's about taking the steps to mitigate that, working with professionals that can kind of transfer that risk, because we're an organization, we might not have all the resources for that. Partner with folks that do, and that can protect your business. That's all I got. Is there any questions from Mr. Stone?
Yes, sir. Well, you just added a quick one before I ask a more complex one. So 30 seconds for 8 characters. I thought I researched that every 2 characters you add adds about 1,000 times more protection. Maybe I'm exaggerating because we're looking. Well, what are you saying? 10, 12? Where's kind of the minimum now to get to?
Well, the password itself shouldn't be the only thing that you use to protect an account. So 2-factor authentication.
Right.
Soon we'll be doing thumbprint or iris scan, but the idea is that the longer the password is, the better protected you are.
Right.
but it is only a finite amount of time. So a 16-character password is as close to infinite as possible, but it's still crackable.
Okay.
So you don't want to do 8, you definitely don't want to do 6 or less, and you need to choose from uppercase, lowercase, although that's less important today as it once was, and then numbers and symbols.
Okay. That's okay. So you had something up there that says you've been hacked. Now what? And you left it open ended. So I'm going to ask the two of you. So we get the rant. So human error. We did all these things we're supposed to. Human error lets somebody in. We get the ransomware or something. Now what? Who's the first one we call?
Well,
Probably the cybersecurity, but how fast do we have to get the insurance involved if we do have ransomware? Do we have to talk to the insurance first before we potentially negotiate? So walk us through, all right, crap, now what? You asked the question, I'm asking it back. Who the hell do we call first and what do we do?
So
or second, first and second.
Ordinarily, if we were your IT department, we would know about the breach before you do, or at least simultaneously. And we have an obligation to alert the authorities. We have to, if it's a data breach of a server or a network, we have to alert the authorities. Now, the police department and the government will not get involved immediately, but it's our responsibility to tell them, and we will start recovery immediately at that point. That is when you bring in the cyber insurance organization, because they're the ones that are going to help you with your position on whether you're going to negotiate if it's a ransomware situation, or if you're going to need help from legal and PR and marketing firms and everything to reestablish your reputation with your clients.
Yeah, I mean, and that is one of the benefits when we talk to folks about getting a cyber insurance policy is kind of that as well, right? Hopefully, internal or external, you're working with Paige and their team, and you're going to reach out to them, or if you have an internal IT team, those are the first folks you're talking to, all right? And then we should be brought in, and we're going to turn it right over to the insurance company. And what's nice of these cyber policies, again, you have law firms that specialize in this. It's not their first rodeo. They're going to kind of lay everything out as far as, okay, here's what we're going to do. And then part of it, again, is talking about disaster recovery. Have you talked about, depending on certain conditions, what you guys can do to maybe keep operating, right? And that's working with your IT provider to have plans in place, to have things you can maybe do to get up and running quicker to minimize the impact of it. So it is a convoluted, it's a multi-layered approach. It's going to go to Paige and their team, to IT, to us, to the cyber insurer, and then it's going to be from there hopefully handled. But that's why also in these policies, you want to make sure you're, for the main things, that you have actual coverage on.
I was just asked for 20-character password the other day. That was a minimum they would set. I think it was Venmo.
Ooh, that's a tough one.
I was like, wow.
It's
like, okay.
Write a novel.
From my standpoint, it's to the point where we all need password managers. And if you don't have one, you really should employ one. I don't memorize passwords anymore. I have a password manager, and I know how the password manager works, and it handles my passwords for all of my systems.
Is that something on your phone, or what's it?
It's on the phone, it's on your browser. I use LastPass, but there are 100 different versions out there. And it creates the passwords for me, it stores the passwords for me, I don't need to worry about it.
And it's stored on your phone, that it knows?
Mm-hmm. Well, phone's over there, but yes.
Got it. All right.
Store it on the phone or on your computer.
Sarah?
This one's for him. So are the password managers that are included in like Google Chrome or on your Apple device? Those
Absolutely do not ever use those.
Great.
I can open up a folder in your machine and tell you what your password is in literally seconds.
So which one do you
So
use?
don't use the save password option when you
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah.
when you're signing up.
And if you do a security vulnerability scan, that's the first thing they're gonna do, is they're gonna come back to and show you the top 5 passwords that you usually use.
So nobody should use any technology. Don't bank
Yes.
with anyone.
Go back.
Go back.
Go
to
back
how
to-
we were 30 years ago.
Go back to
And,
banging rocks together.
Cash only.
Paper file door sounds a lot more
So,
serious.
so I had a dialogue or a booklet. I was going through some cyber classes when I was in the military, and the front of it said absolute best security, and it showed an unplugged, unwired computer. That's the only way to secure it.
So just every day when you're done with your computer, just unplug everything.
No, well, you can't be plugged in at all.
Okay.
So you can pick it up and look at it.
That's right.
Okay, so
You
you
can't
can't
use
really use it.
The paper. All right, so the last thing is like this thing, the clicker, it had a thumb drive that I put in my laptop.
Yes.
Am I screwed?
You can be, yeah.
Great. All right, so I wanted to thank everybody here. This was a great event. We got the room for a little bit, so if you have any additional questions for anybody, don't be shy. But again, thank you for coming. Appreciate it. The speakers, you did a great job. Learned a lot. And I hope everybody enjoyed it and picked up at least a couple of things. Oh, Jen?
Food,
Oh.
drink to eat, if you would like anything
Great.
else.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.